Hey up, you guys, I have an exclusive for you. I have the court documents to show that there is an update in the Prince Harry visa application lawsuit as the judge has just made an order. I'm able to show you that, and I am here with DC lawyer John Witherspoon for him to explain what this all means. Hey up everyone, it's me, Stef The Alter Nerd, your nerdy alternative, and welcome to a very special Daily Nerd and exclusive, and I am here joined by my good friend, Mr. John Witherspoon, DC lawyer extraordinaire. Thank you so much for joining me on this one. How are you doing, mate?
I'm doing very well. How are you?
I'm not doing too bad, but this has definitely lit a fire under my backside. When you sent me this, I'm like, oh my goodness, it is real. Yes, Judge Carl Nichols has submitted an order in relation to the Prince Harry visa case. This is from the Plaintiff Heritage Foundation versus the US Department of Homeland Security. You guys have been saying, when are we going to get an update? When are we going to get an update? Well, we've got one, and yeah, here we see 15th of August 2024, sealed ex parte order signed by Judge Carl J. Nichols on the 15th of August 2024. This document is sealed and only available to authorized persons. ZCAM entered 16th of August 2024. So let's jump into it, John, because what does that all mean? Really, in your opinion, conspiracy theory, whatever?
Well, first of all, I think it would be good to talk about what it does not mean, because there's been some reporting in some of the print media that this is a decision in the case. That is not what has happened. This is a ruling or an order. I should not even say ruling, because a ruling means that someone has asked for something and the judge has made a decision about it. This is simply an order. And the way that it is entered into the computer system, as you can see here on the screen, is very important, because there are really three components of the docket entry that need to be considered individually and together. So let me just take a minute and go through those. The most obvious one is the word order. That means that the judge has asked someone related to the case to do something. It can also potentially mean to not do something. This can have something to do with the case specifically and in terms of moving the case forward toward completion, or it could also potentially, under some circumstances, and I'm not saying that this is the situation here, but it could also be a situation where the judge goes to one of the lawyers and says, hey, I understand that you've been doing X, Y, Z, or that you've been talking about something, or doing something that I find objectionable, and so therefore I'm going to issue an order that compels you to stop doing whatever you have been doing. Again, I don't think that that's the situation here. These are all very good lawyers on both sides of the case, and I would find it hard to believe that was the situation. But anyway, it's an order, meaning the judge has said, as I indicated, that someone involved with the case needs to do something that the judge has asked them to do. The next part of the entry is ex parte, and that's Latin, and it basically means it's one-sided, without necessarily the other side's involvement. There can be a number of reasons why an ex parte communication or an ex parte activity is appropriate. There can also be instances when an ex parte communication is not appropriate. An example of something not appropriate would be, let's say, one side in a case decides that they want to have a communication with the judge, and not involve the other side. That's not appropriate under most circumstances. But in this case, an ex parte communication basically is a communication to or an order to one side that basically does not need to involve the other side. And in a moment, I'll talk about a potential scenario that has been suggested as what's going on here that will, I think, clarify that a little bit more. The other important part here is that this is something that is sealed. Sealed basically means like in a James Bond movie, when M hands over the folder to James Bond, and on the front of it, it says, "For your eyes only." That means basically top secret, do not talk about this with anyone without the judge's permission. And understandably, it would potentially carry a very substantial penalty if you violated the seal and you leaked the contents of the order to another lawyer that is not involved with the case, or to, heaven forbid, a newspaper or something like that. It basically means you're entitled to look at this. Do not talk about it with anybody else who does not need to see it or to know about it or anything along those lines. And as Stef has highlighted there, it's only accessible to the authorized people in the case, which presumably is the lawyers on one side of the case. Sealing is something that judges can do when it's in the best interest of finding justice in the case, meaning we could see another entry this afternoon that says, okay, whatever caused the need for the seal has been lifted. It could be a month from now that it could be lifted. It could never be lifted. So all of the theories that are floating around there about what's going on here, they could be right, they could be wrong. We may never find out. But it's just an interesting state of affairs, especially since, as the screen is showing there, entry number 44, which is the preceding entry, was back in late April. So we're now basically in late August. This case has been in the judge's chambers, on the judge's desk, with the judge's law clerks for 4 months. And that brings up an interesting angle as well, because what it basically means is this has been worked on by the judge and his clerks in other words, his support staff of lawyers. And some reason has developed that they feel it's appropriate for the judge to issue an order that's secret, and it's issued only to one side of the case. And it's just kind of an interesting turn of events. One other thing I'll just point out that's always interesting is the timing of the release. This entry number 45 was added late in the week, I believe late in the afternoon. That doesn't mean that's when the judge actually made the ruling or issued the order, I should say, but it's when it was revealed and added to the docket. And when things happen on Friday afternoon, it's always just a little bit interesting because then it's something that immediately precedes the weekend. I'm not saying that there's automatically some relevance to this, but the timing of it is nonetheless interesting, and it always kind of causes people to scratch their head.
Well, this is the thing. I've spoken to, and known a couple of people that speak in, and work in PR, and they say, look, if you want to lose or bury a story that's going to come out regardless, try and aim for Friday afternoon, Friday evening, because that's when, the news outlets seem to kind of wind down for the weekend and then start back up on Monday. So, yeah, you pointing out the timing of all of this is, we can say at the very least, potentially highly suspect. Now, there have been...
And Steph, let me just interject there. And I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, go for it, mate.
I think it's important to say the judge does not care at all. I can assure everyone, the judge does not care about the PR or any of those types of things. You're absolutely right in terms of what would happen, as far as a corporate news release or something like that. It could very well just be the case that all of this stuff was stacked up on the judge's desk in the outbox. And it was not until Friday afternoon or on Friday or late Thursday or whenever it was that somebody picked all that stuff up and said, okay, we want to get this stuff finished and into the system before the weekend. And that's how it all transpired. So I don't want anybody to get the impression that this is a calculated move of some sort, other than the fact that it just did appear late on a Friday. And you always kind of wonder, all right, well, why is that happening? I think it just kind of means that it's probably just a matter of course. It was something that just needed to be done. And it was not something that, automatically, for instance, Tuesday afternoon, the judge said, okay, this is an emergency. I need this done right away. It just kind of sat there. And on Friday, when they were cleaning up for the weekend, that's when it made its way out the door.
Now, the theory, opinion, conspiracy, whatever situation in regards to the sealed ex parte order is because the ex parte indicates that this is a one-way communication to only one side in the case. People here are postulating that this is towards the Department of Homeland Security for them to check something, do something, or not do something, whatever this order is saying, and we don't know that exactly at the moment, seeing that it's sealed. But it says here that it's only available to authorized persons. Now, it sounds like the prevailing kind of consensus is that this is an order towards the Department of Homeland Security rather than the Heritage Foundation. And with it only available to authorized persons, if we're to go along with this prevailing opinion, could those authorized persons also include Prince Harry? Seeing as it is his information that they are fighting over, could he be part of that ring of authorized persons that's able to see what this order is all about potentially?
That's certainly possible. Again, it's at the discretion of the judge as to who the authorized persons are. And I'm sure that authorized persons only seal is done with some specificity and for some specific reason. It's not just something that he decided he wanted to do for just the fun of it. You mentioned Prince Harry. I'll just mention one theory that's out there. And I kind of went out over the weekend and I had seen this entry come in as well. I was curious about it, didn't really have a good grasp. So I just kind of kicked the hive of lawyers that I am associated with and talked to some of them and said, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? No consensus on this whatsoever. However, one of the possibilities is, and I will preface this by saying that when I mentioned this to one lawyer, I said, what do you think the chances of this are? And the answer immediately came back, and he said 0. So just bear that in mind. But one of the theories is that given the length of time that has passed since the last docket entry in April, and as I mentioned, presumably meaning that this has been worked on by the judge and by his law clerks, I would suspect that he is probably fairly close to finishing the case and issuing a ruling or a decision. There are a number of people who are involved. There are the named parties in the case, as you showed when you scrolled down the page. It's the plaintiff and the defendant, the plaintiff being the Heritage Foundation, the defendant being United States Department of Homeland Security, which you can see right there on the screen. Those are the named parties in the case. There are also often interested parties in a case like this. And given that this is a case about Prince Harry's visa documents and visa application and his immigration status in the United States, he would certainly be a very interested party. So this particular theory says that the judge looked around and said, okay, I'm ready to render a decision or to release a decision on this. But before I do that, I want to make sure that there's not going to be some sort of collateral issue that comes up as a result of my decision, potentially involving Prince Harry. And there has been some speculation, as Steph, you and I talked about earlier, about the status of Prince Harry's visa class. There's some theories out there saying that he's on an A1 visa, which would mean that he's on a head of state visa. That might be the case. It might not be the case. We also don't know. We've talked about his visa status before, a number of possibilities that can pretty clearly be ruled out. A1 is one that I think would surprise a lot of people, given the fact that he has basically stepped back from being a royal, a working royal. But it's conceivable that he still might have an A1 visa, which would be a head of state visa. And that would really be a decision that particular status probably would be more on a decision that was made in Great Britain than it would be in the United States, because basically, you know, he's a citizen of Great Britain, and when he came into the United States, he basically had to apply for a passport and a visa and everything else, and all those decisions were made by the UK. But given the fact that he might be on an A1 visa, or there might be some diplomatic entanglements, it's conceivable that the judge might have said to Department of Homeland Security, this is what I'm thinking of ruling. Before I do that, I want to make sure I cover all the bases and understand all the angles. So I want you, DHS, to go out and figure out what Harry's attorneys might have to say about this. The judge also might say, look, there are parts of his visa application that need to be redacted. I want to understand, as the judge, exactly what parts of this application are the most sensitive, so that something does not get released that causes a problem that blows this case wider out of proportion than it needs to be. So that is one of the theories. As I said, I ran that by another attorney. This other attorney said, no way that that's what's going on. You know, there's all sorts of other strange possibilities as well in terms of, you know, the foreign intelligence, diplomatic security, on and on and on and on. It's just impossible to know, and that's just because this is such an oddball case. You're dealing with a former working member of the British royal family living in the United States. He has children in the United States. It's a very unique and complicated case, which is why it's so interesting above and beyond just the involvement of Prince Harry.
Well, that kind of segues into something else that a lot of people on Twitter have been saying, and they've been focusing on this part here, which is, you know, it's sealed and only available to authorized persons. And they're turning around and saying, oh, well, here we go. Prince Harry is going to be protected. Here at Irene Brit USA saying Judge Nichols has ruled that Prince Harry's immigration documents can only be seen by authorised person. So they're not going to reveal whether he lied on the application. No doubt there's something to hide. The overprivileged, petulant prince is being protected by this corrupt administration. Now, respectfully, with Irene Brit USA, I actually disagree with her assessment here. For me, when I read this, I read it as, well, if there is anything that's going to be redacted, and Judge Nichols is actually going to release this application to the Heritage Foundation, then for me, they'll only release the information that the Heritage Foundation has literally requested for. Anything else will be out of bounds for the Freedom of Information Act request. It's the same thing, and it's called over here a data subject access request. When I used to work in compliance and I used to have to deal with those, if I got a request through and I've got a document in front of me and the information they want is in the middle, but everything else is they don't need, right? or if it's out of bounds, then I would just black off those bits and leave the bit wide open that they've requested and send that across. So to me, I think it's more conceivable that if he does release anything and anything is redacted, it's going to be the full application apart from the two questions that essentially the Heritage Foundation are interested in how Hazza answered them, which is, did he take any illicit substances and did he break any laws? Now, I'm paraphrasing those questions, but you guys get the gist. I think that's more conceivable for the judge to do if he's going to release this document, right? Rather than, we won't know how he answered those questions because he'll release the document, but the information that they wanted, they're not going to give anyway, so why release in the first place? That makes no sense, right?
Right. Yeah, and I think that's a really important point to be clear on. This is not, this business of sealing is related to the judge's order from August 15th or 16th or whenever it was. It does not have anything to do with the ultimate disposition of the case, sealing of Harry's immigration file, or anything like that. The sealing refers to this specific order, which, as I talked about before, is an order for someone involved with the case, probably one of the sides, to do something based on what the judge feels is appropriate to get the case resolved. It is not a system of, two-tier justice or anything along those lines. I'm confident that there will be a decision at some point that basically says one way or the other, yes, this document that Harry filled out to apply for a visa is legitimate, or and needs, not legitimate. It's something that needs to be revealed, or it's something that needs to be kept confidential.
But I mean, either way, let's say the judge does decide to release the application. If anything's going to be redacted, to me, I think they would redact all the questions that were answered apart from the two that the Heritage Foundation are interested in, because they're not going to give the Heritage Foundation any more extra information than what they're fighting for in this particular case, which is those two particular questions, and that's it. So for those turning around and essentially saying here, oh, they're not going to reveal whether he lied on the application or in this order, well, firstly, it's not an order to release the application. It's an order for the Department of Homeland Security to do something or not do something. It's some kind of instruction from the judge, really, in the grand scheme of things. And then B, if the judge does then make an ultimate ruling that he's going to release the application, the chances are that if it is going to be redacted, every single question that he's answered, we're not going to see, apart from the two questions that the Heritage Foundation and all of us are interested in, which is, again, A, have you taken any illicit substances? And B, have you broken any laws whatsoever? Now, in terms of this particular movement that we're seeing here, it was 4 months ago that, yes, they had the response to the notice of the supplemental authority. And then about 4 months later, we now have this sealed ex parte order. Maybe the answer is how long is a piece of string, but soon after an ex parte order, how long are we then to expect potentially another update on this case, John?
Well, it depends. It's hard to know. It depends what the nature of the order is. It depends how long it takes for whoever received the order to respond to it and get it back to the judge, and to tell the judge that we've complied with your order. It's not something that's easily speculated on. It's a situation that again, this order may result in more work for the judge. So the Judge Nichols may have to go back and say, I've got a couple more things to consider here, and we need to take some more time and dig further into this. And to your point about the redaction as well, I think it's important to remember that there were the so-called 3 red flags that came up during the oral arguments back in February when I was in the courtroom. And one of them was, okay, he's on a diplomatic visa. which is problematic because he's working here, he's earning income, presumably from some of his activities.
I mean, just
One of
Better
them
Up
is,
alone.
I'm sorry?
He's on the payroll for a company called Better Up, getting paid
Correct.
like over $1 million a year. So yeah, we know he definitely has a job based in the US. Definitely.
Right. So to be on a diplomatic visa or a head of state visa, and then to be earning income while he's here is a little dicey and problematic. The second potential red flag, and incidentally, these are the, as I recall, it was the judge who used the term red flags. The second one is he is here as a result of some deception on his application about his the status of his drug use or being involved in some sort of illegal activity. And then the third potential red flag is, well, yeah, he was honest on the application, but he was given some sort of special preference and special dispensation by Department of Homeland Security and Department of State and whoever else was involved in reviewing his application. So that's the crux of what needs to be decided here, and I'm sure that's where the judge is focusing his attention, is exactly what's going on here, and how did he get into the country? How is he allowed to stay here? And anything else, as you indicated, Steph, that is peripheral to that or not within the boundaries of those particular issues, I suspect would probably be redacted.
Mm. So, guys, with that being said, that is the in-depth update on the latest movement when it comes to Prince Harry's visa application court case. If you appreciated what came out of Mr. Witherspoon's gob, and of course you did, because his logic is definitely undeniable, guys, I would say, then yes, he does have an Instagram. He is finally on social media. So, yes, Alter Nerds assemble. If you've got an Instagram, invade him. Witherspoon DC, get it done now. And if you appreciated what came out of my gob, and of course you did, because that's why you're here, then make sure you subscribe to join our Alter Nerd tribe, like, share, comment down below your opinion, conspiracy theories, whatever. You do not want to miss my next video. Oh my goodness, I have so many updates when it comes to this Colombian trip. It is unreal, guys. It really, really is. Also, as well, as I always say, help us get to 1 million so I can also get that go play button right there and hopefully cause a Meghan Markle meltdown on Instagram. With that being said, thanks to my good friend, Mr. John Witherspoon, for joining me on this video and being here to explain exactly what this particular order means and dispelling some rumours and myths and hopefully clearing a little bit more up for you guys that are watching right now. And yeah, on the screen right now are going to be some videos that you may want to clickety-click, clickety-click.